Why did the wizarding world never develop technology? Muggles split the atom, landed on the moon, and connected 8 billion people through a pocket-sized rectangle. Wizards still write on parchment with feather quills. How does an entire civilization that can literally bend reality get completely lapped by people who can't even make a pencil float? These are the 5 reasons the wizarding world never developed technology. And the answer is way more interesting than you'd think. Here's the thing that's always bugged people about Harry Potter. You've got witches and wizards who can teleport, transform objects into other objects, and brew potions that let you become someone else entirely. And yet, if they want to send a message to their friend across town, they strap a letter to a bird and hope for the best. Meanwhile, the Muggles they look down on are texting each other in seconds and video calling from different continents. So, what happened? Why did magic users, arguably the most gifted humans on the planet, end up writing with quills and reading by candlelight while the non-magical world built the internet? Let's start with the most obvious reason, the one that gets thrown around the most, and it's the physical problem. Magic and electricity do not get along. Hermione spells this out pretty clearly in Goblet of Fire. She explains that all those Muggle substitutes for magic, things like computers, radar, and electronics, they just go haywire around Hogwarts. There's too much magic in the air. It's like trying to use your phone next to the world's most powerful electromagnetic field, except instead of a magnet, it's centuries of accumulated enchantments, protective charms, and whatever Dumbledore got cooking in his office. And this isn't just a Hogwarts problem. Any area with a high concentration of magical activity would presumably cause the same issues. The Ministry of Magic, Diagon Alley, St. Mungo's Hospital, you name it. The very places where wizards live and work are hostile environments for electronic devices. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what about radios? Because wizards definitely use radios. They've got the wizarding wireless network and everything. That's a fair point. Rowling actually addressed this directly. She says the radios wizards use aren't powered by electricity at all. They're powered by magic. So it's not really a radio in the way we'd understand it. It's a magical device that happens to function like a radio. It's the magical equivalent of a duck decoy. Looks like a duck, isn't a duck. So right off the bat, there's a fundamental incompatibility between the two systems. Magic and electricity exist in a kind of rivalry, where you can have one or the other, but putting them together creates chaos. And when your entire civilization is built on magic, when it's your walls and your air and your blood, adopting electrical technology isn't just inconvenient. It's practically impossible without dismantling everything you've already built. And the education system makes sure it stays that way. Hogwarts doesn't teach a single minute of science. The entire Hogwarts curriculum skips science completely. Physics, chemistry, biology, even basic math, beyond measuring potion ingredients. A wizard can leave school at 17 knowing how to turn a hedgehog into a pincushion, but having zero understanding of how electricity actually works. They're not rejecting technology from an informed position. They literally don't have the vocabulary to understand what they're rejecting. Muggle studies exist, technically. It's an elective, which already tells you how seriously the school takes it. And the content is famously outdated. The class treats Muggles like a quirky anthropological curiosity, somewhere between folklore and nature documentary. Charity Burbage, who taught the subject, actually tried to modernize the curriculum and argue that Muggles weren't so different from wizards. Voldemort killed her for it, fed her to his snake during a dinner meeting. That's the Wizarding World's official review of progressive Muggle education, Death by Nagini. So, even the tiny window that exists for wizards to learn about the non-magical world is treated as a joke elective at best, and a death sentence at worst. A Hogwarts graduate has extensive knowledge of goblin rebellions from the 14th century, but couldn't tell you what a microwave does. And that's by design. That's the surface level answer though. The second and deeper reason is cultural, and frankly it's kind of petty. Wizards think they're better than Muggles, and adopting Muggle technology would be admitting they're not. Rowling laid this out explicitly. She said that the magical community prides itself on the fact that it does not need the many, and she called them admittedly ingenious devices that Muggles have created. To fill one's house with tumble dryers and telephones would be seen as an admission of magical inadequacy. Think about that for a second. Wizards can absolutely use technology. They won't because of what it would say about them. It's pure ego. It would be like a billionaire taking the bus. Could they? Sure. but in their world it sends a message. And in the wizarding world, that message is, your magic isn't good enough. The attitude is perfectly embodied in how the Ministry of Magic treats Arthur Weasley. Arthur is genuinely fascinated by Muggle technology. He works in the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts office. He's got Muggle pictures all over his walls, diagrams of how to wire a plug, and his dearest ambition in life is to find out how airplanes stay up. Rowling even said that Arthur would probably give his left leg for a computer. And how does the wizarding establishment treat him for this curiosity? They think he's a joke. Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic himself, considered Arthur strange because of his obsession with Muggles. Fudge thought Arthur lacked proper wizarding pride, and he actively held Arthur back within the ministry because of it. The man was punished professionally for being curious about the non-magical world. That's institutional snobbery, a system that actively discourages its members from looking outward. The cultural disconnect goes so deep that most wizards can't even pretend to be Muggle for a day. At the Quidditch World Cup in Goblet of Fire, wizards had to dress in Muggle clothing to avoid suspicion at the campsite. The results were spectacular. One old man was wearing a woman's floral nightgown and refused to change because he liked a healthy breeze around his privates. Others showed up in kilts and ponchos in combinations that no actual human being has ever worn. These are adults. They've shared a country with Muggles their entire lives, and they cannot figure out pants. Which raises an obvious question. What about Muggle-born wizards? Kids like Hermione grew up in the Muggle world. They know how phones work. They've used computers. They understand basic science. Shouldn't they be the bridge between the two worlds? In theory, yes. In practice, the assimilation is nearly total. By the time a Muggle-born finishes 7 years at Hogwarts, they've spent their entire adolescence in a castle with no electricity, no internet, and no contact with the non-magical world beyond summer holidays. They don't bridge the gap. They cross it and leave it behind. Hermione, the most brilliant witch of her generation, never once suggests that Hogwarts should maybe get Wi-Fi. And the beautiful irony is that when you look at which Muggle inventions the wizarding world did adopt, there's a hilarious pattern. They only adopted things that were about luxury and comfort. Wizards couldn't continue using outhouses while Muggles had sparkling indoor toilets. That would make Muggles look better than them, and we can't have that. So they adopted plumbing. But a computer? A telephone? No. Those are beneath us. We have owls. The pride runs so deep that when Muggle solutions are objectively better, wizards refuse to acknowledge it. Cell phones are faster and more reliable than Owl Post, and that's not even debatable. You can text, call, video chat, send messages through a dozen different apps, all in seconds. An owl, especially if your owl is old and decrepit as the Weasley's family's Errol, might take hours or days. Or it might just collapse from exhaustion halfway there. But sure, wizards, your system is superior. Now, reason number 3 is the one that Rowling herself leaned into the hardest. Wizards didn't develop technology because, from their perspective, they simply didn't need to. When you can summon any book, instrument, or animal with a wave of the wand and the word Accio, when you can communicate with friends by means of owl, fire, patronus, howler, enchanted coins, or just, apparate to visit them in person, when your newspaper has moving pictures and everyday objects sometimes talk to you, then the internet does not seem particularly exciting anymore. And honestly, she's not wrong. If you could teleport anywhere instantly, would you really care about booking a flight on an app? If you could summon any object to your hand from across the room, would a drone delivery impress you? If a simple charm could wash your dishes, fold your laundry, and cook your dinner, would you feel the burning need to invent a Roomba? Magic solves most of the problems that technology was invented to address. Need to get somewhere? Apparition, flu powder, portkeys, broomsticks. Need to talk to someone? Patronus messages, enchanted mirrors, flu calls. Potions can regrow bones overnight. Enchanted chess sets play themselves. Quidditch exists. Magic covers basically everything. The Flu Network alone is a remarkable system. Around 1,000 fireplaces across Britain are connected to it, including the Ministry of Magic and various wizarding shops and inns. Flu powder was invented in the 13th century by Ignatia Wildsmith, and the price has stayed constant for over 100 years at 2 sickles a scoop. Try finding that kind of price stability with your phone bill. So, from a purely practical standpoint, wizards looked at their magical solutions and thought, we're good. And for centuries, they basically were. The wizarding economy tells the same story. Gringotts is the only bank. One bank for an entire civilization. It's run by goblins. Operates on a gold standard with 3 denominations: galleons, sickles, and canutes. And the most advanced financial instrument available is a vault with a dragon guarding it. Credit cards don't exist. Neither do loans. Investment portfolios portfolios or anything resembling a stock exchange. The Weasleys carry their money in leather pouches. Lucius Malfoy's wealth sits in a physical pile of gold underground, guarded by a literal monster, basically a dragon's hoard with extra steps. And nobody seems bothered by this. Wizarding startup culture is non-existent. Nobody's trying to disrupt the flu network with something faster. Fred and George Weasley are genuinely treated as visionaries for opening a joke shop. That's how low the bar for commercial innovation is. A shop that sells puking pasties and extendable ears is considered cutting-edge wizard business. That's where the fourth reason kicks in, and it might be the most important one of all. The Statute of Secrecy hid wizards from Muggles, froze them in time. In 1689, the International Statute of Secrecy was signed. By 1692, it was in full effect, and the timing wasn't a coincidence. The Salem witch trials were happening in 1692. Witches and wizards were being hunted, persecuted, and killed. Rowling confirmed that the real-world Salem witch trials were a key factor in the wizarding world's decision to go into hiding. The hiding was comprehensive too. The statute resulted in the creation of the Ministry of Magic in Britain in 1692, and by 1750, Clause 73 was added, requiring each ministry to be responsible for concealing magical creatures as well. The separation was total. Now think about what this means in terms of innovation. From 1692 onward, the wizarding world was essentially operating as a closed system. Ideas stopped flowing in from the Muggle world, knowledge stopped cross-pollinating, and nobody felt any pressure to keep up with outside developments. And what happened in the Muggle world after 1692? Oh, not much, just the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, the invention of electricity, the telegraph, the telephone, the automobile, the airplane, the computer, the internet, nuclear power, space travel, nothing big. While Muggles were being pushed to innovate by competition, necessity, and curiosity, wizards were sitting comfortably in their hidden world, solving every problem with spells that had been around for centuries. Nobody was racing anyone, just centuries of comfortable magic stagnation behind a curtain of secrecy. It's genuinely fascinating when you consider the specifics. The Malfoy family, of all people, opposed the signing of the statute. They obviously couldn't care less about Muggles. They just happened to enjoy rubbing shoulders with royalty and aristocracy, and the statute would force them to withdraw from that enjoyable sphere of social life. Even the most supremacist pure-blood family recognized that cutting off contact with the Muggle world meant losing something real. And that leads us to the fifth and perhaps most unsettling reason. Magic might actually make you less innovative. There's a fascinating theory that fans and commentators have discussed at length. Because wizards can solve most problems with magic, they have less incentive to problem-solve in other ways. When a wave of your wand fixes most issues, why develop critical thinking about alternative solutions? Why tinker, experiment, or engineer when a spell already does the job? The evidence supports this. Most wizarding inventions aren't truly original. They're magical modifications of Muggle ideas. Muggles make cars, wizards make them fly and turn invisible. Muggles make brooms, wizards make them fly. Muggles make fireworks. Wizards, well, Fred and George specifically, make them turn into flying dragons. The creativity flows in one direction, with wizards riffing on Muggle inventions rather than creating entirely new categories of innovation. And when wizards do try to push magic itself into new territory, it's genuinely dangerous. Pandora Lovegood, Luna's mother, liked to experiment with spells, tried to push the boundaries of magical innovation, and one of her experiments backfired badly and killed her. Magic defies the laws of physics, which means experimenting with it carries enormous unpredictable risks. Every year, St. Mungo's Hospital treats at least one injury caused by homemade flu powder, and that's just people trying to recreate a transportation system they've been using for 700 years. There's a deeper problem here too. Magical knowledge isn't treated as science, it's treated as recipes. Snape's Potions textbook is literally a cookbook with handwritten margin notes. Peer review doesn't exist. Controlled experiments don't exist. Nobody has a systemic method for testing why a spell works or how to improve it. A Muggle chemist publishes research, gets peer-reviewed, and other scientists build on the findings. A wizard invents a spell, writes it down, maybe teaches it to an apprentice, and that's the entire R&D pipeline. Healing works the same way too. Madame Pomfrey can regrow bones overnight with Skellygrow, which is genuinely miraculous. But there's no indication that anyone at St. Mungo's is researching why Skellygrow works, or whether it could be improved, or whether its principles could be applied to nerve damage or brain injuries. The Longbottoms have been sitting in permanent spell damage ward for over a decade, and the best best anyone can offer them is sympathy and bubblegum wrappers. The knowledge exists to regrow an entire skeleton in one night, but nobody can figure out how to fix a brain. That's what happens when your entire knowledge system runs on tradition instead of method. The risks of magical innovation outweigh the benefits when the existing magic already works well enough. So, wizards don't push boundaries. They maintain what works and leave the rest alone. Even the one-time wizards tried to create something resembling modern media, it fizzled out completely. In the early 1980s, a group of firebrand wizards started a British wizarding broadcasting corporation, wanting their own television channel. The ministry essentially shut it down, arguing that Muggle radio listeners were more tolerant and gullible than TV viewers, making television too risky for maintaining secrecy. There's a quote from the Muggle Prime Minister, Herbert Corley's boss, as fans know him, in Half-Blood Prince that captures the whole absurdity perfectly. When he's told about the chaos Voldemort is causing, he says, "But for heaven's sake, you're wizards. You can do magic. Surely you can sort out, well, anything." And the wizards essentially shrug because their incredible power never translated into incredible problem solving. So here's where that leaves us. You've got a civilization with godlike abilities that essentially stopped progressing in the 17th century because magic already solved every problem worth solving, and trying to push it further tended to end with someone in St. Mungo's or worse. And in a healthy dose of cultural superiority, total isolation from the Muggle world, and a system that actively punishes curiosity about non-Muggle solutions. You've got a perfect recipe for civilizational stagnation. The wizarding world isn't backwards exactly. They took a different path. Their technology is just unrecognizable to us as technology. A fireplace that connects to 1,000 other fireplaces is technology. A potion that regrows bones overnight is technology. A cloak that makes you invisible is technology. It's just that this technology peaked centuries ago and nobody seems particularly interested in pushing it further. And here's the final thought that ties it all together. The Harry Potter franchise itself is going through its own version of this question right now. The HBO series premiering Christmas 2026 with Dominic McLaughlin as Harry, John Lithgow as Dumbledore, and Papa Esidu as Snape, as a genuine chance to dig into exactly these kinds of questions in ways the original films never could. With Succession's Francesca Gardner writing and Mark Mylod directing, and the series planned to run for 7 seasons, there's enough time to really explore the contradictions and complexities of a magical society that chose comfort over progress. Because ultimately, the wizarding world's relationship with technology is more than a fun bit of lore to debate. It's a mirror. It asks us something uncomfortably relevant. If you had the power to solve every problem easily, would you still push yourself to grow? Or would you sit in your castle, writing with a quill by candlelight, absolutely convinced that your way was better, while the world outside invented wonders you couldn't even imagine? The wizards chose the quill, and looking at how they turned out, maybe the Muggles got the better deal after all. Now, speaking of wizards ignoring obvious solutions, can Voldemort survive a headshot? That's your next lesson here at Stickman Hogwarts. Click now before he figures out what a Glock is.